Here we go again, China and, yes, Russia infiltrating the power grid, which could close down the whole bloody country, for God's sakes. What are we going to do about this, Quentin? What does this mean to you?
Larry, my first question is, do you think for a minute we haven't done the same thing inside the Chinese grid and the Russia grid? Because if we haven't, we should.
I have
selling all of our debt to China, and so they have us over a barrel. Even if we wanted to do something about it, there's nothing we can do about it.
What does that mean? You may not be here, but I got to tell you, at some point in this conversation, the United States government, I don't care who the president is, Democrat, Republican, has to stand tough and tall in the saddle with China. The fact that they own some Treasury bills unimpresses me. I don't care about that. We have to do something. A statement should be issued about this Chinese sale of weaponry to Iran and about this electric grid stuff. What do you think here? When's the United States going to stand up here?
Larry, first of all, we have to find out if it's true. There are all kinds of things that are reported in the paper that aren't true. But if it is true, you are absolutely right. It's an act of war. We have to start responding as such. We have to push back against this aggression. And the way to do it is not at all to take some realpolitik view that we need to be doing it to them. It's not to worry about Treasury bills. It's to treat this as an act of aggression, just like the Soviets putting missiles into Cuba in 1963. We should act just the same way, period,
Good
paragraph.
for you. Good for you. You see, Quentin?
When we dived in on AIG, maybe we were, going too fast, maybe it was too much, maybe it was deserved. But AIG, it had insurance on the shipping industry across the Pacific. We needed to save those guys at least for a few days or a week, because otherwise it was going to freeze commerce. Insurance companies go out of business. Hey, a lot of life policies go down, they get threatened, they get traded something. But it doesn't stop the economic system. I really don't know why you put the government in that.
All right, go ahead. Who said what? Don Luskin?
I did. Don Luskin said,
go
what?
For it. You go for it.
I just can't imagine on what economic principle we're going to judge Trans-Pacific Freight to be an insurance interest worth government intervention and my life insurance policy not.
The ships don't leave the harbor unless they're insured. It would have actually frozen
I see, and that's the most important thing. So millions of widows and orphans who have paid trillions of dollars into life insurance policies, it's okay to leave them destitute as long as some container ship makes it from Shanghai to San Francisco? Come on.
Don, you bleeding heart. No, I think the widows and orphans would be far worse off if the world economic system collapsed.
Yeah, but the widows...
I think AIG should suffer and Goldman Sachs should have gotten paid.
Let's not waste the audience's time with me and Quentin bandying words about. Let's get to the point here. The reason why it's systemically important to support these life insurance companies is very simple. Remember September 17th, Larry, I was in the studio right there in New Jersey. I walked onto the set and said, and you said, have you heard this news story about how in the wake of the Lehman Brothers failure, this money market fund called, what was that called? I'm blanking on the name, but it was that first money market fund that broke the buck.
Agreed.
You said, oh boy, that was it. You said, oh boy, this has really bad implications because ordinary people have their money in that money market fund. It's going to shatter Main Street confidence. Well, this is the same thing all over again.
I don't think
everybody's got their money in these insurers.
I don't think it's the same thing.
I don't see how it's the same thing, Jerry Borer, because, you read through the accounts of this story, which was basically leaked by the Treasury to the Wall Street Journal people. They have a 10-year time horizon, variable annuities.
Right.
To them, the buck is about 600 on the index for the S&P. We're well over 800 now. And what is TARP? Look, if an insurance company fails, put them into receivership. Put them into bankruptcy. That's the deal. It turns out most of them are in pretty good shape anyway.
Right, yeah, you put them in receivership.
Excuse me for jumping on your question. I really apologize. But, Larry, you know all the horrible strings that are attached to TARP. If these guys didn't desperately need it, why would they be asking for it? They must be really in trouble.
I think most of the industry, I think you've got some in the industry that want this, to want to get bailed out of their investment portfolio, and I do not want to bail them out of their investment portfolio. I had a guy, senior executive of a huge Midwestern insurance company, say to me today, he wrote me an email, I won't use any names. He said, it's a terrible idea. He liked my blog against it. He said, we don't want to be run by Congress. We don't want to be run by the Treasury. We don't want to have our compensation, our sales incentives set. He said, we don't want to be run by H-1B visa foreign worker restrictions. We don't want any of that stuff, and we can work our way out of this thing. That's what he said.
Why have they been acquiring banks specifically so they can apply for TARP funds?
I think that was it. Well, all right, Jerry Borer, you go. I want to hear from you guys.
They've been acquiring banks specifically so they can apply for TARP money. I mean, when the money was going out for free, when it was no strings attached, we're just going to ladle the money out. They lined up. They wanted to be eligible for it. Now that there are strings attached, they're thinking twice about it. But I think this is definitely a mistake. I mean, I want to hear from some liberals about this imperial presidency. This is amazing, the accumulation of power in the executive branch in, what, 3 months? That's a great concern to me.
I mean, that's a great... Look, Jim LeCamp, we're now going from commercial banks to General Motors to lube jobs through the guarantee for warranties. Now we're going to go to insurance. Is there no limit to the interference and control of American free enterprise here? Does anybody fail, Jim LeCamp? Is there any vestige left of free market capitalism where you can succeed, which is great, but you also have the right to fail?
Yeah, and you left out healthcare. Healthcare is going to be next. Cars, insurance companies. It's a great big power grab. And what's really disturbing about this, and this really bothers me, is the fact that they're asking for the money, because they were telling us they didn't need the money just a month ago. Now they've seen what's happened in the last month, where Rick Wagner gets fired. A lot of bank heads are going to be next. They're going to impact bonuses that are paid by banks. What are they going to do with insurance companies? Limit the amount of life insurance benefits you can pay out?
Right.
Now, I agree with Don that some of these companies are extremely important. They pay pensions, they have money market funds, they have gig contracts, but put them into receivership.
We've all lost money, Jim LeCamp and Don Luskin.
I agree.
They're not going to zero.
I agree. Put them into receivership and let it pay it out from there. I totally agree with you.
That is right. I mean, look, every investor class, 100 million more people have gotten clobbered in the last 12 to 15 months, but that doesn't mean we have to tarp everybody. That's where I'm going on this.
And we're at 10 trillion now. We're at 10 trillion now with all these government guarantees. We got to float another $2 trillion in bonds this year. Who's going to buy those bonds unless we have to start jacking up interest rates to attract the buyers?
Can I just make this point? Stocks are rallying. Yes. Corporate bonds are rallying. Junk bonds are rallying. The economy is beginning to show signs of recovery. Why do we... Quentin Hardy, you were right on the money in this. And Quentin, you were so smart on this point. I want to go to another
I remember those days.
Listen, I got to go back to you. TALF.
Dang.
The TALF program that's supposed to rescue securitization assets. Well, guess what? It ain't happening. The auction on TALF yesterday was a pathetic $1.7 billion. The month before, it was $5 billion. It's a $1 trillion problem. And the hedge funds are saying they don't want to play with the Fed's money or the Treasury's money because they know what strings and restrictions are coming down from Congress on foreign workers, on compensation.
I think that's fantastic.
Well, yeah, right. So
I think that is fantastic, and I do not understand where this imperial presidency stuff comes from. These companies came in and asked for a handout saying, I'm so hurt, come save me. It ain't like the White House did it. They did it
shoved
and
it
asked
down
for it.
their throats.
Now that they find out there are strings that are backing away, I am fine with all of that. There should be strings, and they should back away unless they need it so bad they take the strings.
If TALF doesn't work, Don, so what? That's my position. Where do you say that? It ain't happening. The hedge funds aren't as dumb as people thought they were, even with government handouts, Don. What's your take? TALF is not happening.
You cannot say so what to having the credit grid blank out any more than you can say that to having the electric power grid blank out. We got a problem here, and the solutions aren't pretty, but we need solutions.
But the hedgies don't want to play, Jim LeCamp.
That's a problem. So we got to take those attached strings off.
But they won't. They're not going to do that.
Bring back free money. Bring back free money and
you're
no
going to have to come up with different solutions. We've gotten into a survival of the weakest mentality here. We have to come up with different solutions. Survival of the fittest is always what's been driving capitalism. It's worked for 200 years. Now they're trying to do it the other way. It's not working. We got to redo our entire plan.
What is wrong with free market capitalism?